Hello, you wonderful crusher struggler. How the heck are you? Happy December 20th. I'm recording this and I'm going to release it in the same moment because it's a crazy time of year. Are you making it? Am I making it? Are we collectively going to make it through this? Oh man, the holidays are awesome, but gosh, it's just for me at least, it's kind of turns my life upside down. So I hope you are doing as well as you can. Let's give ourselves some grace this time of year and know that maybe we're not going to keep up as much as we would like with anything, really any aspect of our life, including training and climbing. But I do find getting in a good workout this time of year is a nice way to handle the stress. And I think another great thing to do this time of year is to reflect. And I've been doing quite a bit of that lately. I've been going through my training journal that I keep. I keep a reflective training journal where I get to see back on the years that I've been training and climbing prior to. And that's one of the main things I wanted to talk with you about in this. That's, in fact, the main thing I wanted to talk with you about in this thing is how I keep track of my training and my performance and my thoughts and my dreams and my climbing trips and my adventures and all of that. And so I'm reflecting back on that right now. I'm flipping through these pages and I wanted to share some of these reflections with you. And the way that I structured this, I've got this training journal that essentially it's a 5-year reflective journal. So every day of a year, I make a note on something that I did that day. And sometimes it's a really detailed notes, like on sets and reps and weights that I'm using, if I'm lifting weights or if I'm doing a hangboard protocol. Sometimes I'm just noting climbs that I did. Like if I'm climbing on a TB2 or a moonboard or something, I'll make a note of the attempts and the grades and the climbs or like the set problems in the gym. And then sometimes it's, I'm just like resting. And so the note is like resting. And maybe I'll make a note of how I feel. Like if I climbed really hard the day before or I did a trail run or something, I'll just make a note of how I feel. And of course, if I'm going out climbing, I'll do a little breakdown of that. What went well, what didn't, if I'm projecting, where I'm at. So anyway, every single day I enter something and I've done this for years. So for years, I do this in my life, like my life, where I'll make notes about things that are going on with my kids and all that. And then I do it a separate one for my training and my performance. And I've found such joy and value in being able to reflect year after year, because after I finish a year, I start the next year underneath that prior entry. So I'm holding this journal in my hands right now and it goes back to 2021. So I've got now 4 years of notes on my climbing and my training. And I get to reflect every day of kind of where I was at 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And so I want to share some of these reflections with you here because I kind of delight in this at the end of the year of kind of going through a lot of these things. And so I'm going to flip to the back first of my journal here, where I keep a list of my test metrics as well as my performance highlights. So like notable routes that I've sent, or maybe I didn't send all of them, but just they were notable for a reason. And so let me just read through some of my test metrics here for you to see where we're at, where I'm at. So the first entry that I have in this journal here was from January of 2021. I typically start these journals in January because I like to have like a nice clean year and then ultimately 5 years. So I'll have one more year in this journal. And anyway, in 2021, so January 4th, 2021, my 5-second half crimp max hang, I added 32.5 pounds. And so I've got tests all the way up till just a couple of months ago, actually, but let me find one that's applicable to January. So January of 2024, I did the same max hang with 65 pounds. So that is that double? 32.5 to 65? Yeah, that's double. Oh, wow. So this is cool. This is what I love about reflecting is now I can see in a few years there, January 2021 to January 2024, I doubled my finger strength, at least for this metric, this 5-second half crimp. And I test a bunch of other things. I won't read through all of these right now, but that's really cool for me to see, actually. It's interesting because training is so incremental that it almost seems like progress is very slow, or maybe it seems like progress doesn't happen. Actually, as I'm looking back through these notes that I've taken on my strength. It hasn't been linear. I have actually gone backwards where I've gone up to 50 pounds, but then I went down to 47 and a half pounds. And that's probably because I was doing like an endurance block or something. But anyway, to be able to look at this at a glance and see that I've doubled my finger strength in those few years, that's pretty rad. I'm psyched on that. And then I've got ones in here for weighted pull-ups and endurance and flexibility. I log all this stuff in my apps. Do you guys use apps when you're to do your training? I've got Crimped, where I program my own stuff if I'm working with a coach at Lattice, or if I'm doing a Power Company program. I've got the Power Company app. I've got the Lattice app. I've got my ForceBoard app for doing my finger strength and pulls. And so I've got a lot of, I love apps. I'm like big on training apps because I really like structure in my life. But I also log it all in this journal so that I can reflect, so that I can see every single day, where was I at on this day 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago, but also these tables at the back I've got. And I love seeing that. I love seeing the progress that I've made on finger strength. Got a lot more work to do. Definitely a lot more work to do. And actually January coming up here, I'm going to be putting a huge emphasis on building strength. But the other thing that I want to show you back here in the back of this journal here are my performance highlights, or basically like my route highlights. And this one is super fun because while I do log these in like my daily entries, as well as I don't do 8A, but like sometimes I'll log things on Mountain Project or whatever, I write them down here. Something about like analog for me. I just love to hold it, and it's just much easier to digest. And so here I've got, going back to 2021, notable performance highlights, sends. Most of these are outdoors. Probably all of them are outdoors now that I'm glancing at it. Sometimes, no, actually there's a Moonboard one in here from those like really proud. It was my first V5 on the 2019 Moonboard, and I was super psyched on that. So that one's in here. The rest of them, it looks like, are mostly outdoors, mostly at the Red, but also some stuff here from some trips I took to Leavenworth and to Vegas and to Yosemite. And anyway, it's like, This is now, I've got 30 notable sends or so in here. And so the first one, let me just read the first one that I've got in here. Magnum Opus 12A, quote, "Hell yes, even after punting, amazing," unquote. So that was not my first 12A. So my first 12A came just before this journal started. But anyway, this was, I think Magnum Opus was my second 12A. And God, I remember that day. I punted for sure. And like the business on this route is like the first few bolts. And so I finally sent the crux. It's like decidedly, that's all the 12A climbing. And then I think it's like probably 5-10 to the chains. Nobody punts. You have a full sit down rest. Everybody climbs to the chains, but I did not. I went up and I like was excited, and I think I got in my head and totally freaked out and grabbed something wrong and punted. And then I thought that was going to be it for the day. I can like so clearly remember this day now that I'm reading this entry. And we went, me and my partner walked over, this is my buddy Johan, we walked over and we climbed like some heinous slab over at Slab City. And then on our way out, I was like, well, let me just see if nobody's on the route. Let me just try again. I was totally gassed from the day and nobody was on it. And so I was like, well, let me just try those moves again. And I sent. What a good day. So anyway, I love having that little reminder. See, there's like lots of little shots of gratitude that I get when I do this reflecting, which is fun. And then scrolling through here, I mean, they're not all just like the hardest sends. So one that's just a couple entries later was from an 11A, a route called Super Dario. And my note there was heady on site, very proud of this one. And I remember that too, because while I had already climbed 12B at that point, this was an 11A, it was a proud send. It was notable. I think the reason I put it at the back of this journal is because I just recall being so scared on point on the on-site and almost backing off of it a couple times, but just finding ways to collect myself and keep going. And that was a really proud one. The next entry right after that is my first 12C, Mosaic. And I said, quote, "First C, almost felt easy, total flow," unquote. Yeah, that was a cool day. For sure, that was a cool day. It did kind of almost feel easy too. I trained really hard for it. I set like a little replica on my home wall, my spray wall, and then when it went, somewhat casual. But man, that was such a cool, exciting day. Had a great whiskey after that, bourbon whiskey out here in Kentucky. Anyway, I digress. I'm like going down too much of a rabbit hole on my reflections, but I love doing this. Do you do this? Do you keep a list of your routes? Do you scroll back through? I find like the analog, the way that I've kind of created this journal. And so for the last oh, I don't, God, this is like year number 9. I think I've been doing this. I kind of have created my own. I actually just printed this. I just worked with a designer to print the journal that I've created myself all these years, and then added some things like some pages to add goals every month and all of that. But also, like, what's interesting is you get to see patterns. So I get to see not just in my test metrics and my performance highlights like I showed there, but like in the daily entries where I'm looking back multiple years ahead, I get to see some patterns, on my training and like what training modalities and interventions and things are effective for me, what bore fruit, if you will, and what maybe didn't result in the gains that I wanted, or what projecting tactics, or just like notes about my mindset, a pattern of me avoiding routes that have really bad feet or routes that have crimpy cruxes. And I start to see those patterns. I'm like, okay, maybe I should like move towards that. Maybe I should work on that a little bit more. So this little conversation that I get to have with myself as I'm going through this journal year after year has been a delight. And it's also just like 5 years of adventures and training and all this stuff, which I like to geek out on. So anyway, I'm printing this. I've printed it. I've created this. And so you can actually get this. You can buy this. This is my first product. I'm super excited about this, you guys. I'm going to have t-shirts, but this is like a thing. This is like my first thing where this is like very much me. This is something that I have used and that has brought me incredible performance benefit, as well as incredible joy and gratitude for my life as a climber. And so anyway, yeah, let me just open up to page here. I'm going to open up to November 12th. This is not a random selection. You'll see. I've got this one bookmarked because this is a special one. But looking back 4 years, so 2021, I note in here on November 12th of 2021, I did a gym session with my friends, Nick and Johan, over at Rock Sport. And I make some notes here about my fitness, the routes that I climbed, the ones that gave me challenges, and how I felt, which is cool. I won't bore you with all of those notes, but there's a lot of room. So I like to keep detailed notes about my gym sessions. And so I note that. And then I also did a PM workout where I note that I did some stretching, and I was working on the crux move on my spray wall for Mercy the Huff. So that's cool. That's when I was projecting Mercy, which was a very, very challenging for me 12B. It was my second 12B and a very proud send, and I had to work really hard on that one. So yeah, so I just like note these, and now I get to look back and say, oh yeah, I remember that. And then on 2022, I'll just read through all of these years just so you get a sense. On 2022, I said, rest day, feeling sore from yesterday's run. Is running really worth it? So yeah, I didn't train on this day in 2022, but the day prior. Let me look at November 11th. Let me see. Got up at 4:30 a.m. Stressful day. Afternoon trail run, 2.5 miles. Felt good, but didn't do much of a warm up. So maybe that's why I felt so damn sore the next day, and am questioning how much of a runner I want to be. Is because I didn't warm up. What a dummy. But anyway, that was that day. Basically, just a rest day. And then in 2023, let's see. Oh, this was a fun day out with the kids. I did the note here. It says splitter day at Brews Brothers with the kids. Hung up some top ropes, but they mostly wanted to play in the creek. And then in the afternoon, I did some max hangs and some pull-ups. And I note my sets and reps and my rate of perceived exertion. And so that was kind of like a double day. And yeah, I remember that day very, very clearly. What a fun day out in November climbing with the families. And then in 2024, November 12th, 2024, I sent the force. That's why I quote unquote randomly opened it up to this page. Sent the force, so psyched and proud. And then I have a bunch of notes in here. Actually, I'll just like post a picture of this page. I'll put a picture up of this page so you can see like how I do my entries. But anyway, that's 4 years of November 12th. And I just, again, the perspective here is really cool. That's why I created this. So like, I've just been doing this myself. You could just create this yourself too, if you don't want to buy one of these, but I've put a lot of thought into the structure of this, not just the daily entries, but also the monthly goals, and then the tables at the back for entering your test metrics and your performance highlights. And it's 5 years of essentially future struggles and breakthroughs and training, nutrition, tactics, mental game, all the thoughts, all the things that go into trying to be the best climber that we can be, and also just having fun adventures and getting psyched and thinking about projects and then sending projects. So I'll put a link down there for you if you're interested in it, or maybe you have a climber in your life who loves to log and keep track of training and performance and trips and notes and thoughts and all those things. It's $40, and I truly cannot think of any sort of training piece of equipment or gear that is $40 and lasts 5 years and appreciates in value with age. And that's what this journal is all about. It gains value the more that you use it, because after you complete the first year, you start over on that day. So if you start at January 1st, for example, you'll have January 1st, 2025 as your first entry. You'll go through the full year and you'll log your test metrics and your performance highlights along the way and your goals each month. And then starting in January of next year, 2026, the following year, then you do the next entry right underneath it. And that's where you start to be able to reflect, and you can compare your January goals to your current January goals and what worked and what didn't, and where were you at in your climbing journey. And so anyway, yeah, it's on Amazon. So for my international listeners, it will print locally at an Amazon distribution center and be able to ship out to you locally. So if you're like a Prime member, I think it ships for free in just a couple of days. And if not, it's still like super fast shipping and won't cost you very much, even if you don't do Prime. You know, a gym membership is $80 or $100 a month. A pair of shoes is maybe $150 or $200. None of those last you 5 years. This lasts 5 years, and I really have gotten so much joy out of it myself. I think you will too. There's some low-hanging fruit here in terms of being able to reflect on one's performance and one's training and what's working and what's not. So yeah, anyway, hope you like it. It's called the 5-Year Training and Performance Journal, which is not a very creative name, but like I just kind of choked and had to pick something. But maybe I'll do an update if I can get some feedback. And I sent some early copies of this out to a bunch of trusted friends and coaches, people who have been on the show, and the feedback has been so positive. I was very, very happy to hear that people love the format, and I'm very excited for you to check it out. So thank you for listening. It was really nice to do a little reflecting here, and I'm going to keep reflecting as we wrap up this year. And if you do want to check out this journal, I'll put a link right down there in the show notes, or you can swing by thestruggleclimbingshow.com/journal to see more about it and read more about it. And I hope you are able to reflect a bit here as we wrap up this year. You were awesome. You did awesome this year. 2024 was a tough one, but you crushed it. And I got a good feeling about 2025, y'all. I've got a really good feeling about it. I hope you do too. Let's have some fun. Let's try hard, and I will see you soon.